Your dreams coming true.
I think basically what it's about is about you know growing up and realizing what a life with consequences is about. I think when you're a kid, you have this dream. Oh boy, I want to play guitar. I want to whatever it might be, And the way you imagine it, of course, what you're really imagining is sort of a life without complication. I guess that's what the song is about, really, sort of about hey, dealing with life with consequences, not kind of letting it keep you from moving on down the road, keep you from going forward.
You wrote a song many years ago called Growing Up. Some people could say that all your songs are about growing up. Is that the case?
They have, a lot of them have been, I suppose even these are, really. A lot of stuff on these records is sort of like, hey, trying to figure out what is grown up, what's it mean to be a man right now, and certainly a lot of the stuff on these two records, are kind of about characters are all coming to terms with those issues, with those things. What's it mean? What does it mean to be a husband? What's it mean to be a father? What's it mean to be a friend to somebody? When you finally kind of get a good look at the world as it is, how do you not give in to cynicism, not give in to despair, just because you can afford to, And, basically it's all the characters are all just trying to find their place, where do they fit? Where do you fit in the world?
About this business of manhood, you've written a lot of songs in the last few years, particularly Walk Like a Man, Real Man, Loving You as a Man, Job. I mean, is this
Ladies and gentlemen, walk like a man.
Is this adulthood or masculinity that you're looking at?
I suppose, yeah, I think that particularly in my business, it's something where you're afforded the luxury of extended adolescence, that can go on indefinitely, and I think that I found that I've gotten very good at in my job, and because I was good at my job, for some reason, I thought that I was capable at a lot of other things in life, relationships, and if you're not in your 20s, you really don't notice it. You're too busy, kind of scuffling but I think as you get a little older, you start to realize, oh, no, I see. I'm good at this, but all these other things I'm really bad at. I've been failing at really miserably for a long time, and kind of beginning to investigate what those things were, which basically is your real life, your life away from your instruments, your guitar, your music, your work, your life outside your work, and I think in that area, it was something where over the past 8 years or so, I kind of been investigating. I felt I really came up short in a lot of ways, and so I was just trying to sort my way through, feeling good, whether I've got the guitar on or whether it's in the case, My manhood to me, what makes, what kind of, what sort of, what are my commitments, what are my, and how to try and stick by them, as best as possible in a world where you really can't know anybody else or ever really know yourself.
That's definitely a theme that comes through in Tunnel of Love, isn't it? The idea that people deceive themselves and that true love is an incredibly hard thing to arrive at.
I think very few people can confront themselves very accurately. We all live with our illusions and our own self-image. That is, there's a good percentage of it that's, it's always a bit of a pipe dream. And but I think if you can kind of cut that stuff away a little bit, which is kind of what I've tried to do in my music, and realize, like I said, like, oh, I do this well, but I'm very bad over here. I'm just taking baby steps in this part of my life, you know. I think it gets you closer to sort of, you know, feeling a certain sort of fullness in your life that you might, that I always felt like I was missing. You know, I enjoyed my work and everything, but I felt like when it came to kind of functioning in outside of it, I was always had a hard time.
View that of the two records, that Human Touch is about a man falling from grace in various ways, and that Lucky Town is a record full of images of redemption and so forth.
Well, I would say, I mean, if you're trying to cut the records up in that fashion, that yeah, there's a lot of kind of groping around on Human Touch, and there's less on Lucky Town. There's a little more of finding your place, you know. And I think finding, refinding yourself. You know, it's about sort of getting back in touch with your own humanity and the good things that you feel about yourself, and also there's less fear on that record. You know, really the records are about kind of, if you throw back to Tunnel Love record where the guy in Cautious Man has the love and fear on his hands, tattooed on his hands. That's about the story for most people, I think. You know, there's a world of love there, you know, but there's a world of fear too, and it's standing right in front of you, you know. And very often that fear feels a lot realer, certainly more urgent, you know, than the feeling of love. And the night my little boy, my son was born, I probably got, it was as close to what I guess I would say it was just a feeling of a real pure sort of unconditional love, and with all the walls down, you know. All of a sudden what was happening was so immense that it just stomped all the fear away for a little while. And I remember I was really overwhelmed with the feeling of the whole thing. And then but I also understood why why you're so frightened. You know, it's like, you know, when that world of love comes rushing in, that world of fear comes in with it. And you know, whether you're afraid you got something you can lose. You know, to open yourself up to one thing is to face the other thing. You have to embrace both things, you know. And then you embrace those things, and you're just around the corner from, you know, death, the whole bit, the whole 9 yards. And so, but it was also something where I think that what I felt was so powerful that I said, yeah, I don't. My music over the past 4 or 5 years has kind of dealt with those very almost primitive issues, you know. And it's about somebody trying to walk through that world of fear so he can live in the world of love, you know.
Inextricably linked in the public imagination with New Jersey. You now live in California,
Yeah.
which is considerably different. Why do you live here, and what difference does that make to the music you make?
I lived in New Jersey for a very long time, and I kind of written about a lot of things that had a lot to do, very tied into my past. Always, you know, there's something, it's that old, you know, a lot of ghosts, different ghosts you're chasing, you know. And I felt like whatever they were, that was done, you know. That was basically done for me, you know. I'd kind of taken that as far as I could, and I was interested in just kind of making a bit of a break, both sort of with whatever people's perceptions of me were up to that point, and just in my own life. I was interested in kind of putting some distance between me and not New Jersey, the state, but but sort of part of whatever that kind of whatever that some part of that meant for me inside. And then, Los Angeles is a good place to do that. It was really, we came out and we got a really beautiful house, and Patty and I got together and the babies, and it was just a good place to. You have actually a lot of anonymity, a lot of anonymity. People always came west to refine themselves or to recreate themselves in some fashion. This is the town of recreation, very often, mostly in some distorted way, But it's the raw material. It's just what you make of it.
Were you in here preparing for a world tour when the riots started happening here?
Oh yeah. We were, yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Initially, it was a funny sort of thing. It was that particular afternoon in Los Angeles was an afternoon, I think, that people were really frightened. It was the day when all the invisible walls that could put up. L.A. ends up actually is a very segregated city, and all the invisible walls that you put up start to fall, and you can feel them starting to melt away and come down and come down. And people really got very frightened, There were, this is, I mean, you can go 5 blocks that way and you'll see burned out buildings, It was just a powerful thing. We felt pretty helpless. We felt angry and helpless, but I can't say surprised. I think that if people, a couple of years ago when Do the Right Thing came out, there were newspaper articles reviewing the movie, afraid the movie was going to incite riots in the cities. Well, if they think a movie is going to incite riots, obviously there is cause to riot, And it was just, I think it was just a matter of time. I think if you've watched the political situation in the States, see, people are disgusted with the whole two-party system at the moment. There's nobody that anybody likes. And I think people have lost their faith that government can tackle those problems. And it's hard to see if people themselves have the will, to sustain the type of effort that might give people fighting chance at having, just the small respects, nothing, just the small respects that, leading a decent life, And it's tough, It's like, it's sort of like, hey, I have a nice house, and I live in, a great part of town, and I've made a lot of money, and I think you feel frustrated, and you feel, I think of the days after the riots, everybody felt very kind of, you got military helicopters buzzing 30 feet over your backyard every 10 or 15 minutes. I don't know. I have no idea, but it was not, it wasn't a surprise, and I don't know where it's going to lead, actually.
Switching tack completely. I went to see Bob Dylan last night, and in the 60s, Bob Dylan had a level of celebrity which is probably similar to the one you enjoyed in the 80s, and he seems to have spent the period since doing what he calls dismantling his myth.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something you're going to have to do?
Whatever your recent image is, it's always, there's elements of it that are a part of who you are and a part of your personality, but a lot of it is just some sort of collective imagining, that you may have contributed to in some fashion, in some of the things, in other ways you haven't. And it can end up being sort of, it's certainly confining at some point, so the best thing is to just have all the holes poked in it, as best as possible, and everybody's always willing to willing to help you out. And what happens is, I think you get in a situation where the myth of success in America is so powerful that story overwhelms and can overwhelm the story that you may think you're telling or want to tell, and that's success at that level is a tricky business. It's a tricky business because a lot of distortion creeps in, and I think that not being somebody who was particularly a media manipulator. You know, it was fascinating realizing that you really do comment on a lot of different levels. You know, at that level of success, there's the songs you're writing and the things you're telling, and then there's what's happening to you. That's also another story. And I've found out a lot, very often at that particular period of time, people were sort of focused, you know, like literally your success story is a bigger story than whatever you're trying to say on stage, you know. That happens a lot here. It happens a lot here.
Classic songwriting imagery in these albums, Bluebird of Love, Gospel Rain, so forth, it seems to take place, the song seems to take place in a less identifiable landscape than probably they have done in the past. Is that because you feel you can no longer write about the real recognizable America?
No. Yeah. Actually, generally, the imagery is pretty close to the imagery in a lot of my other music. I think it probably came up out of listening to country music. Hank Williams, Woody Guthrie, you know, where there's a lot of very basic imagery, you know, very simple imagery. I guess it's kind of a mythical landscape that everybody carries with them, you know. Rivers, forests, they're all, you know, it's all very just evocative of certain fundamental things, you know.
These records seem less concerned with the kind of the blue-collar America with which you are identified with recognizable people's lives, and more with the life of a person who happens to be a very big rock star and lives in Hollywood. Does that necessarily bring with it a certain detachment from your audience?
First of all, I wouldn't agree with you. You know, I think that I don't think that I wouldn't really be interested in making that kind of record. You know, specifically. I think you write about what feels most urgent to you. You know, at any given time. You know, and I don't really think I don't try to connect it completely to my own life in some very specific fashion. I don't think it's like some particular peek into like what's the guy that does lifestyles of the rich and Robin Leach territory, you know. It's like I don't think it's that. And I don't think there's anything on there that anybody, you know, couldn't really, you know, find, with the exception of like places where I was kind of having some fun with it. Like I say, putting my cards on the table where, hey, it's about just living, you know, like I said, love, people trying to connect to each other, you know, and that's happening everywhere, you know, it happens on any block, you know.